Sister Amaka knelt in the dimly lit chapel, the flickering candles casting long shadows on the stone walls. She had devoted her life to the service of God, finding solace in the silence and tranquility of the convent. Born in a small village, her faith had always been unwavering, and her decision to become a nun was one she believed to be her calling. Each day, the rhythm of her life began and ended with prayer, and in between, she dedicated her time to helping the needy and sick. Yet despite the peace her life brought, a small voice deep within her whispered of something more, something beyond the confines of the convent walls. She suppressed it, dismissing it as the devil's work. Her life was about sacrifice, about surrendering to God's will. She had chosen this path after all. But lately, that small voice was growing louder, and she wasn't sure how long she could silence it. The sun was just setting when Amaka received her mother's letter. Her younger brother, Uche, had fallen seriously ill. The news hit her like a ton of bricks, sending her heart into a spiral. She had always been close to Uche, even after choosing the convent over staying with her family. He was her blood, her bond to the life she had left behind. Amaka fell to her knees that night, praying fervently for his recovery. She had always believed in the power of prayer, but as the days turned into weeks and Uchi's condition worsened, something inside her began to shift. Why had God not answered? Was he testing her faith? Her prayers grew more desperate. With each passing day, she found trusting the divine more challenging. Doubt, like a weed, was taking root in her soul. Amaka's mother visited the convent for the first time since her daughter had taken her vows. Her usually kind and warm face was now etched with worry and disappointment. Sitting in the garden, where they could speak privately, her mother's words cut deeper than she expected. "Amaka, I need you to come home," her mother pleaded. "Your brother needs you, and I need you." Amaka's heart twisted painfully. She had left her family for what she thought was a higher purpose, but now it felt like she had abandoned them. Her mother's disappointment was palpable. "This life you've chosen," her mother continued, her voice soft but firm, "it's taken you away from us. And what do we have now? No husband, no children, no daughter. And Uche, I chose this path for God." Amaka whispered, her hands shaking. Her mother's eyes held hers, a storm of emotion swirling in their depths. "Then why is God not saving your brother?" The question hung in the air. And for the first time, Amaka didn't have an answer. Back inside the convent, Amaka began to notice the solitude of her life more acutely. She had always felt a sense of peace in the silence, but now it felt different. Her prayers seemed to echo back at her, unanswered, and her fellow sisters, though kind, were distant. She saw the world through the bars of the convent's gates, and suddenly it seemed too small. Her nights were long and sleepless. She would lie awake, listening to the rustle of the wind against the convent walls, her thoughts turning toward her family. Uche's illness weighed heavily on her. She sacrificed everything for her faith, yet she felt powerless to help the people she loved most. As days bled into nights, she wondered if she had made the right choice. It started with a dream. Amaka found herself in a vast open field, the sky above her dark and foreboding. In the distance a figure stood, its face hidden in shadow. She approached cautiously, and as she got closer the figure's features became clearer, a tall man cloaked in a darkness, his eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I am a friend," the man said, his voice smooth and almost soothing. "I can help you, Sister Amaka. I know your struggles." Amaka took a step back, her heart racing. She knew this was no friend. His presence was unsettling, his words dripping with hidden meaning. But before she could ask more, the dream ended, and she awoke in her bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She dismissed it as a nightmare, but deep down, something told her it was more than that. "I am a friend," the man said, his voice smooth and almost soothing. "I can help you, Sister Amaka. I know your struggles." Amaka took a step back, her heart racing. She knew this was no friend. His presence was unsettling, his words dripping with hidden meaning. But before she could ask more, the dream ended, and she awoke in her bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She dismissed it as a nightmare, but deep down, something told her it was more than that. Uche's condition worsened, and with it, Amaka's faith continued to unravel. She had spent countless nights on her knees, begging God for a miracle, but nothing came. She began to question everything, the purpose of her vows, the power of prayer, and even the very existence of the God she had devoted her life to. Her prayers turned into angry demands, her faith teetering on the edge of collapse. If God wasn't listening, then who was? She felt abandoned and forsaken. As Amaka sat in the chapel one evening staring at the crucifix, she whispered, "If you're not going to help, then I'll find someone who will." It was a dangerous thought that sent a shiver down her spine. But at that moment, she didn't care. The man from Amaka's dream appeared again. This time, she wasn't dreaming. He appeared to her in the chapel, standing in the shadows, his dark form blending with the dim light of the candles. "I can help you, Sister Amaka," he whispered, his voice wrapping around her like a serpent. "I can give you what you desire." Amaka's breath caught in her throat. She knew what this was. This was no angel, no messenger of God. This was the devil himself, tempting her in her weakest moment. "I don't need your help," she said, though her voice faltered. "Don't you?" he asked, stepping closer. "You've prayed and begged, and yet your brother suffers. What kind of God allows that? I can make it stop. I can give you the power to save him." Amaka closed her eyes, her heart racing. The devil's words lingered in the air, tantalizing her with their promise. Amaka stood in the chapel, the candles casting long shadows on the walls. The air was thick with tension as she whispered into the darkness, calling out to the devil. He appeared just as he had before, his eyes gleaming with malevolent anticipation. "You've made your decision." Amaka swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "I'll do it," she whispered. "I'll make the pact." The devil stepped closer, his grin widening. "Good. Then let us begin." The ritual was dark, twisted, and far removed from anything Amaka had ever imagined. She knelt before the devil, repeating the words he whispered into her ear, her voice shaky but determined. The air around her grew thick and oppressive as the final words left her lips. The room seemed to spin, and for a moment Amaka felt as though she might faint. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The pact was sealed. The devil's smile grew wider. "It's done. Your brother will live." Amaka collapsed to the floor, the weight of what she'd done pressing down on her like a heavy stone. She had saved Uche, but at what cost?